Have you ever heard the saying, "Don't poke the bear"? Well, it seems the European Union just did with a multi-trillion-dollar stick. In a move that's shaking the foundations of international finance, the EU has decided to seize the interest earned on frozen Russian assets. This isn't just a political chess move, it's a high-stakes gamble that could backfire spectacularly, potentially triggering a financial avalanche that no one saw coming. We're talking about a decision that could be remembered as one of the biggest strategic blunders in modern history. So, what exactly happened and why is this sending shockwaves across the globe? Let's break down this financial drama piece by piece and explore the potentially devastating consequences that could affect us all. This story is about more than just money, it's about power, trust, and the very rules that govern the global economy. Let's set the stage. Back in 2022, following the escalation of the conflict in Ukraine, Western nations, including the EU and the G7, made an unprecedented move. They froze roughly $300 billion of the Russian central bank's foreign reserves. This was a massive financial sanction, designed to cripple Russia's ability to finance its war efforts. For 2 years, this huge sum of money has been sitting in Western financial institutions, primarily in Europe, unable to be touched by Russia. Now, fast forward to May 2024. The EU has decided to up the ante. They announced a plan not to seize the principal amount of $300 billion itself, but to confiscate the profits generated from it. Think of it like this. If you have a massive savings account, the EU isn't taking your savings, but they are taking all the interest it earns. This interest, or windfall profit as they call it, amounts to a significant sum, estimated to be around $3 billion per year. The plan is to transfer this money to Ukraine, with 90% allocated for military aid and the remaining 10% for reconstruction and humanitarian support. On the surface, it might sound like a clever way to support Ukraine without dipping further into EU member states' own budgets. It's presented as a legally sound maneuver, a way to make Russia pay for the damages caused in Ukraine. The European Central Bank itself had warned against this, but political pressure prevailed. The decision was hailed by some as a bold and necessary step. But here's where the plot thickens. By targeting the profits, the EU believed they had found a loophole, a way to hit Russia financially while sidestepping the thorny legal issues of outright confiscating sovereign assets. They thought they could have their cake and eat it too. They were wrong. This move, intended as a precise financial strike, has instead opened a Pandora's box of economic retaliation and unintended consequences. Russia's response was not what the West expected. Instead of loud, empty threats, they reacted with cold, calculated precision. They didn't just mirror the EU's move, they escalated it in a way that targets the West where it hurts most: corporate profits and private assets. Russia's countermove has been described as surgical and devastatingly effective. While the EU is taking $3 billion a year in interest, Russia is targeting a much larger pool of assets. We're talking about an estimated $105 billion in European corporate assets that are still operating within Russia. These aren't state funds, these are the investments, factories, and bank accounts of some of Europe's biggest and most well-known companies. Let's look at some examples. German industrial giant Volkswagen has seen its assets in Russia frozen. Austrian banking group Raiffeisen Bank, one of the largest Western banks still operating in Russia, is facing immense pressure and potential seizure of its local operations. These aren't small players, they are pillars of the European economy. Russia's strategy is simple. For every action the West takes against Russian state assets, Russia will retaliate against Western private assets on its soil. This creates a direct link between the political decisions made in Brussels and the financial health of major European corporations. Suddenly, the shareholders of Volkswagen and the customers of Raiffeisen Bank have a vested interest in the EU's foreign policy. This isn't a state versus state conflict anymore. It's dragging the private sector directly into the line of fire. Russia's message is crystal clear. If you touch our sovereign assets, we will touch your corporate ones. And they have far more leverage in this exchange, with billions in tangible, physical assets to go after. The $3 billion the EU gains seems like a pittance compared to the tens of billions that European companies now stand to lose. The ripple effects of this financial tit-for-tat go far beyond Europe and Russia. This is where we see the potential for a major, long-term strategic blunder. The entire global financial system, especially since World War II, has been built on a foundation of trust and the rule of law. A key pillar of this system is the concept of property rights and sovereign immunity. Nations around the world park their foreign reserves in other countries, primarily in the West and in US dollars, based on the belief that this money is safe and untouchable, protected by international law. This is what underpins the US dollar's status as the world's primary reserve currency. The West, by freezing and now seizing profits from Russia's assets, has shattered this perception of safety. Think about it from the perspective of a country like China, Saudi Arabia, or India. They hold trillions of dollars in US and European government bonds and other assets. They are now watching this situation unfold and asking themselves a very simple question. Is our money truly safe? If the West can do this to Russia today, what's to stop them from doing it to us tomorrow if we have a political disagreement? This single act has eroded decades of trust. It signals that Western financial institutions can be weaponized for political purposes and that legal protections can be reinterpreted or bypassed when it's convenient. The immediate consequence is a growing movement towards de-dollarization. Countries are actively seeking alternatives to the US dollar for their reserves and for international trade. They are looking to diversify their holdings, perhaps by buying more gold, investing in other currencies like the Chinese yuan, or developing alternative payment systems that bypass the Western-controlled SWIFT network. This isn't a fast process, but the seeds of a new financial world order have been sown. The West's move, intended to isolate Russia, may ironically accelerate a shift away from a US-centric financial system. By trying to punish one adversary, they have given every other country a reason to question their reliance on Western financial infrastructure. The long-term cost of this erosion of trust could be astronomically higher than any short-term gain from seizing Russian profits. It is a classic case of winning a small battle but potentially losing the war. For global financial dominance, the very system that gives the West its economic power is being undermined by its own actions. So, why is this being called one of the biggest strategic blunders in financial history? Let's recap. The EU, in an attempt to fund Ukraine, decided to seize about $3 billion a year in interest from frozen Russian assets. They thought this was a clever, low-risk move. However, the consequences have been anything but. First, Russia retaliated with surgical precision, targeting over $100 billion in European private corporate assets within its borders. This has put major European companies in a precarious position, turning a political dispute into a corporate crisis. The potential losses for these companies dwarf the amount the EU is seizing. Second, and more importantly, this action has fundamentally broken the trust that underpins the global financial system. The principle that sovereign assets are safe and protected by law has been compromised. Nations across the globe, especially those in the global south and those not perfectly aligned with Western interests, are now spooked. They see that their reserves, held in dollars and euros, could be seized or frozen based on the political whims of Western governments. This has given a massive boost to the de-dollarization trend. Countries are accelerating their efforts to find alternatives, whether it's gold, other currencies, or new payment systems to reduce their vulnerability. In the grand scheme of things, the $3 billion a year for Ukraine is a drop in the ocean. But the cost of this move is a significant crack in the foundation of Western financial supremacy. It's a self-inflicted wound that could have repercussions for decades to come, potentially leading to a more fragmented and less stable global economic order. The West may have thought it was playing chess, but it seems they've knocked over the entire board and the pieces are still falling. Thank you for watching. It's a complex issue with huge implications, so I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think this was a smart move by the EU or a major miscalculation? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the events shaping our world. See you next time.